Just how did Randy's 20-year partner Alvarez/Pena get there? And he intends to enter a guilty plea in January 2012 to aggravated identity theft. Judicious reading of pro-Randy blogs reveals the classic recipe of an emotionally incompetent, totally gullible adult person, still with an under-12, infantile literal mind, with a predisposition toward self-loathing, for being taken in by the Santa Claus myth or other shocking untruths. A classic extreme narcissist according to clinical psychiatrist Dr. Gunwardine. The blog starts the little bio summary, like this: from fake psychic to artist, the mystic transformation of Jose Alvarez. Among the 4 gifted artists featured in the Norton Museum of Art's new Altered States exhibit, there is only one who started out on an entirely different career path. How different? Extremely different. Jose Alvarez/Pena, pictured, of Fort Lauderdale, was a fake psychic. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that he was a fake channeler, a fake seer. He traveled all over the world on a fake passport, claiming to be inhabited by a 2,000-year-old spirit named Carlos, in order to expose con artists and refute mystic beliefs. Note the blogger's own words here, following. But 25 years ago, the Venezuelan native was on another path. Fired up after an overly literal reading of 60s pop religious author Carlos Castaneda, the then 18-year-old Alvarez/Pena went to one of James Randi's rationalist lectures, prepared to show him the myriad ways he was wrong. Castaneda is a metaphysical novelist. Randy is the famous 82-year-old Fort Lauderdale magician, who evolved into a professional skeptic with a specialty in exposing fraudulent metaphysicians. Alvarez listened, and got an education as Randy convinced him. His entire belief system was predicated on an appalling credulousness, and gullibility is the skeptic's word. For this, they can be so shocked at their own gullibility, they spend lifetimes falsely insisting everyone else is gullible like they were. Randy explained that shamans were frauds and psychics were con artists. Randy was believed 100%. Thus Alvarez/Pena was converted from a gullible believe-anything person to a gullible believe-nothing person. Kept in that frightened mind state for the rest of his life by the strong self-loathing for being taken in. He just happened to carry this in his personality makeup. Not his fault. Gradually, the two men created a character that Randy and Alvarez believed would demonstrate the gullibility of both the public and the media. That's a false belief of skeptics. Alvarez would say he was possessed by a 2,000-year-old spirit called Carlos. Sample Jose Alvarez, artwork 2011. The tapes in Alvarez's studio tell the story. Alvarez would come on stage as Alvarez, and at the moment Spirit Carlos took over, his heart would stop, as verified by a nurse. In conventional shows of this would-be miraculous kind, the nurse would almost certainly be a plant, but that was too obvious to Randy and Alvarez. In Carlos' case, the nurse was authentic, but Alvarez used a trick from Indian yogis. He had a tennis ball stuck in his armpit. With some pressure, the pulse in his arm would slow, then stop, blocked by the tennis ball, giving the impression that his heart had stopped. It was the salt that made everything else believable. After that semi-factual opening, the rest of the act was gibberish. The earth is a magic crystal, Alvarez would intone, while audiences hung raptly on the incoherent message. At the end of the show, Alvarez would explain the con, and show how he did what he did. In many respects, the act Alvarez prefers the term performance art was similar to that of Randy's friends Penn and Teller, who will do a trick, then show how it was done. Of course, Penn and Teller always conclude with a breathtaking trick for which there is no reveal offered as a final assertion of their magical bona fides, but that wasn't possible given the purpose behind the creation of Carlos. For me, says Alvarez, the performance got interesting when I would ask the audience just why they had come to see me. I never left anybody thinking I was a channeler. It's a wonder he wasn't lynched. As Mark Twain said, if you are going to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh, or they'll kill you. China bought his act, so this blogger claims with no support, so did Australia. False according to CSICOP's own Skeptic magazine, where he performed, says the Skeptic blogger, at the Sydney Opera House, and his trick was revealed only later on the Aussie version of 60 Minutes. False again. Alvarez was announced on TV, and jeered at in Sydney media. Glasses of water were thrown on TV. Skeptic magazine rated the Sydney performance as a hoax backfiring. The audience numbers were very small in Sydney, 200 to 300. Alvarez never got a full house. Nowhere near. So can we believe the skeptic blogger who is so gullible he just repeats Randy publicity releases? Blogger continues, the character took him to the Teatro Verdi in Venice, to the Whitney Biennale in New York, all over the world. Everywhere. People fell for it, claims the blogger. False again. He was announced by hostile Sydney media. Adjacent video. So can we believe this blogger? Alvarez did Carlos for about 15 years. He took no money. So who paid the bills? Where did the massive theater takings go? The purpose of the performance was the interchange between the audience and the charismatic performer, as well as the reveal about how easy it was to provoke mystical belief. Today, Alvarez's life is very different. His high-ceilinged studio at Randy's headquarters in Fort Lauderdale used to be a racquetball court, and it's decorated with pictures of him with other renowned skeptics such as Carl Sagan, Richard Dawkins, and Penn Teller. I was 18 or 19 when I started, very green, says Alvarez, who is now 42. It was a great opportunity to create something, and it became a phenomenon, limited only by the fact that I would expose the tricks at the end of the show. But the answers were not relevant to me anymore. To Alvarez, his performance art as Carlos was a bit of a put-on, while his long-standing interest in more formal art eventually became his true passion. Art is authentic spiritual fulfillment, as opposed to Carlos' inauthenticity, he says. The performances were taking something away from people, and not replacing it with anything. I wanted to give. I think my work gets more generous as I go along. I see it as a vehicle of hope. I work more with this, a gesture toward his heart, and less with this, his head. Alvarez's exuberant art is laced with feathers, black and gold mica, all manner of textures and colors. Sometimes I have specific ideas. The painting with the peacock feather that's at the Norton, I had in my head a very precise image. Much of his work involves the careful layering of color and texture. He describes the process as tedious, so he always has several different projects in several different media to keep from getting bored. A painting here, a video animation there. He is really brilliant, says Gavlak. He is smart intellectually, and his work is beautiful and well done. Randy is proud of his associate's second career. I have watched him grow as an artist and at the same time keep his feet on the ground. There is always a wow factor to Jose's art, another presentation, another direction, from the relatively simple to the more exciting and provocative. Was Alvarez ever tempted to go into the mystic business seriously? That would be horrendous, he says. To dupe people? No, never. Though he traveled the world on a false passport, duping everybody for 15 years, can we believe anything he says? Has Alvarez ever seen any mystic who struck him as authentic, who has made him question his certainties, in the same way Randy did all those years ago? He shakes his head. It does not matter if it's a Yogi or Uri Geller or John Edward. It's always a trick. If it's not a trick, then the laws of physics would be different. You see. Alvarez here underlines the permanency of his conversion from a gullible believe-anything person to a gullible believe-nothing person, kept in that frightened mind state for the rest of his life by the strong self-loathing for being taken in. He just happened to carry this predisposition in his personality makeup to believe nothing as an insurance policy, so it can't happen again. Such was the life-changing trauma. 15 years later, still paralyzed,